Hello and welcome. Today, I'm going to do a movie recap regarding a 2017 science fiction horror film entitled Alien: Covenant, a movie sequel of a 2012 film Prometheus. Warning: spoilers ahead. Enjoy the recap, everyone. The film starts with Peter Weyland speaking to his creation, the android David. Weyland refers to himself as David's father and hopes to use David in seeking out the answers to humanity's creation. David questions Weyland regarding his mortality and how David will live on long after Weyland dies. Weyland responds by making David serve him tea. In the year 2104, a colonist ship, the Covenant, is flying to its destination, an uninhabited planet called Aurigae 6. It consists of 15-person crew with approximately 2,000 colonists on board. The android Walter sets up the solar sails on the ship as he goes to check on the colony's embryos. Moments later, the Covenant is hit with a neutrino blast. Walter rushes to wake up the crew from their stasis. Captain Jacob Branson is trapped in his pod as his stasis pod malfunctions and is burned alive. His wife, Daniels, watches Jacob perish as she helplessly tries to save him. The rest of the crew is taken out safely. Daniels grieves for her husband. She watches a video of him scaling a mountain, with him telling her he wishes she were there. Christopher Oram assumes the position as the ship's captain. The crew gives Jacob a send-off and ejects his body into space. Oram expresses to his wife Karina that the crew doesn't have much faith in him, being the captain of the ship. The crew repairs the ship's damage. Walter then picks up a transmission, appearing to be sent from another human. The rest of the crew listens to the transmission as well. Oram picks up that the transmission came from a nearby planet, which apparently has a more habitable atmosphere than Aurigae 6, and not to mention it would take 7 years and 4 months before they reach Aurigae 6, and nobody is willing to go back into stasis. Oram chooses to go down there, against the objections of Daniels. As the Covenant remains in orbit, a shuttle with an expedition team is deployed onto the planet, while pilot Tennessee stays up on the mothership, with medic Upworth, and her husband, Rix. The rest of the crew steps down, and begins to observe their surroundings. As the crew tracks the transmission signal, they come across the crashed engineer ship. While entering, Hallett touched the black spores that release small clouds that fly into his nose. Meanwhile, Ledward step on the same black spores which fly into his ears. Upon entering the ship, Daniels comes across with Dr. Elizabeth Shaw's dog Tag. They see a holographic projection of Dr. Elizabeth Shaw, who had sent the message. Both men start to feel sick and weak. Karina guides Ledward back to the shuttle for medical attention as he pukes blood on her. Karina and Tennessee's wife, Ferris, tend to Ledward, who starts violently convulsing. Ferris quarantines Ledward, with Karina still inside the room. Ledward coughs up more blood, and then has something start to break out of his back. A small neomorph emerges from Ledward's back, spilling his guts out as he dies. The creature pounces on Karina, and mauls her to death. Ferris returns, and tries to shoot at the neomorph, missing every shot. She ends up hitting a tank, causing the shuttle to explode, killing herself in the process as the neomorph escapes. Oram soon sees the shuttle explodes, as his wife in it. Meanwhile, Hallett starts to get worse. Another neomorph emerges, this time, out of Hallett's mouth. Meanwhile, Tennessee attempts to bring the ship down to the surface to save her, but Upworth talks him out of it. Hallett's husband, Sergeant Lope, warns him. Suddenly, the neomorph attacks Daniels and Walter protects her and loses his hand to the creature's corrosive acid blood. As they try to subdue the other neomorph, it attacks a security member. The crew eventually shoots it dead. A cloaked man shows up and fires a flare, scaring the other neomorph off into the darkness. The mysterious man leads the crew to a temple in a city full of humanoid engineer corpses. He has introduced himself as David. David tells the crew that Ham and Elizabeth came down upon the city of engineers, but their ship released a deadly bioweapon that killed the entire engineer population, and Elizabeth died when the ship crashed. After the crew members tell David of their mission, they attempt to contact the Covenant, but are prevented by fierce storms. Meanwhile, David shows Walter a flute, and teaches him how to play it. Walter bonds with David over their shared creation, and interest in the ways of their creators. Another security member, Rosenthal, steps away to clean herself off. She then comes face to face with the now grown neomorph, who rips her head off, and starts devouring the rest of her. David comes across the neomorph, and tries to communicate with it, only for it to be shot dead by Orm, to David's horror. Orm demands to know what the hell is going on, and what David is up to. David explains that he used a black liquid from the planet as an experiment in creating new life forms. He observed that the creatures used meat hosts and killed them upon their birth. Meanwhile, Tennessee learned of her wife's death from Daniels. David brings Orm to a chamber filled with xenomorph eggs, all of which are waiting for Mother. He assures Orm it's safe. Orm looks into the egg as it opens up, and a facehugger pops out and wraps itself around Orm's head. Soon as Orm gains consciousness, a creature bursts out of Orm's chest, killing him. It appears to have fully formed limbs and mimics David as he makes specific movements. Walter finds David and confronted him that he was the one who unleashed the black spores upon the engineer city, killing all the engineers. David tells Walter that humanity is a dying species, which is why they are trying to save themselves through colonization. David gently kisses Walter, before ripping something out of him and disabling him. Daniels discovers the corpse of Elizabeth, who appears to have had something burst out of her chest. Lope and crew member Cole get found by the creatures. Lope is attacked by a facehugger and is burnt by the acid, but the facehugger is killed by Cole. Cole is killed by the rapidly growing alien that came out of Orem. David attempts to go after Daniels. He pins her to the ground and forces a kiss on her. Walter returns and starts to fight David, letting Daniels get out. Together with Daniels, Lope is taken out to safety. Walter appears to gain the upper hand, but David is seen reaching for a knife. Tennessee descends to the planet's surface in another lander to rescue Daniels, Lope, and Walter. The now fully grown xenomorph rushes to attack the crew as Tennessee flies them out of there. Tennessee tries to fry it under the turbines, but the xenomorph evades the fire. Daniels is attached to a harness as she swings around, trying to kill the monster. Daniels orders Tennessee to release the lander's crane, despite the fact that it would throw them off balance. Tennessee does so, and Daniels manages to get the creature trapped in the crane. The survivors make it back to the Covenant. Upworth tends to Lope's facial burn. Daniels also tends to Walter, though she senses that something may be off about him. Daniels and Tennessee comfort each other after all they've been through, and losing their loved ones. Suddenly, an unidentified life form is detected on the ship. Daniels and Tennessee run to the med bay, and find Lope dead, with something having burst out of his chest. The two detect the creature's whereabouts. It stalks Upworth and Ricks as they are in the shower. The xenomorph uses its second mouth to go through Rick's head, before killing him and Upworth. Daniels lowers the creature into the vehicle bay. Walter opens the hatch, as Daniels tries to get the xenomorph to fall out. A large vehicle starts rolling toward Daniels. She manages to duck out of the way, as the vehicle impales the xenomorph, and drops out of the ship, back down to the planet. Daniels and Tennessee go back to their original mission plan as they return to hypersleep. Daniels puts Tennessee to sleep, and is prepared to have Walter do the same for her. Before she sleeps, she asks Walter if she'll help him build a cabin by the lake. He doesn't immediately respond, and Daniels quickly realizes it is David. She screams and tries to break out, but David puts her to sleep. The movies end with David going over to the refrigerator of embryos and brings 2 alien embryos to store with the others. David then records one last transmission before heading off on his own mission. I hope you enjoy another episode of our movie recap. Until next time.